Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your stuffed host, Dom, and in this special Thanksgiving episode, we're going to take a look at the 1987 slasher film directed by John Grissmer, Blood Rage. We take our leftovers to a dark corner of the house and get stuffed with some scary stories. And this year, I'm most thankful to have you all listening to the podcast. Thank you all so much. So, pile high on your plate, get some pumpkin pie, and give some thanks to all things scary. Filming of Blood Rage took place in Jacksonville in 1983. That's where producer Marianne Cantor had secured a large number of local film investors to come on to produce the film. Scenes that were part of the nature trails were shot on the campus of the University of North Florida, and the apartment complex was located in West Jacksonville. Additional filming for the opening drive-in scene that took place in New Jersey. And according to Cantor, the only reason why she appeared in the role of Dr. Berman, which I was surprised to learn that she was like the producer and then she showed up, it was because the actress that they hired to do the role that was coming from New York, she was coming from New York, she just failed to show up. And I've had that happen before where I was shooting a short film and one of the actresses decided kind of at the last minute to be like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to do it, but it was in a weird way and we had to find someone kind of at last minute. Cantor also noted that the production of the film was rocky and that star Louise Lasser and director John Grissmer didn't really get along on set, and according to Cantor, Grissmer quit during the middle of the shoot. Though she was able to get him to agree to return. The film's working title at the time was Complex, though it was retitled under Slasher by Grissmer, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Although the film was shot back in '83, it was only given a limited release theatrically in the United States by the Film Concept Group under the title Nightmare at Shadow Woods in '87. This cut of the film was truncated to a considerable amount, and a lot of the gore was the special effects that they had were cut a lot. The Nightmare at Shadow Woods was the title that the cable television title for the film, and it was heavily edited again, abbreviating a lot of the gore again, but it contained the swimming pool scene, a swimming pool scene that was not found in any version of the film, for at least for the '87 VHS version of Blood Rage, which is what it was titled when it was released on VHS. It went over a lot of different titles throughout production, and not just production, but post-production, and the VHS contains a lot of the gore and includes some early scenes that are missing from Nightmare at Shadow Woods version, where Maddie visits Todd at the mental hospital. Eventually, in December 2015, Arrow Films released Blood Rage. It was titled Blood Rage this time, finally, on Blu-ray and DVD with 3 different versions. So I think there's one which is like the television cut, which cuts down a lot more of the gore, but has like some extra scenes. Then they have another one which is just like the original theatrical cut, which doesn't include that scene but has some of the gore, and then another cut which has all of it cut together to give you one longer fully, I guess, realized film, the one that, and all 3 cuts are endorsed by Grissmer, so there isn't one person who's like, that's not the cut that I wanted, or some producers like, that's not the one I think is true. It's like they're all viewed as like the correct cut, which is great, amazing. You got nobody arguing over anything anymore. So, with that isn't cranberry sauce. Let's get into Blood Rage.
Looks like you're gonna get a chance to meet the rest of the family. My psychotic brother just escaped.
Hot bread, everybody.
Here's to the new family. I think I got you.
Hey, who's that looking chick there?
I don't know. Got to have friends here. This place is slow death.
Oh, we'll find something for you to do.
Looks like you two have had quite a party.
Here I am.
I think that you should go home too, because there's a bad person out here tonight.
Okay.
So go home and don't let anybody in.
Okay.
Hi.
My God.
Ah, that's horrible. How did they show that on TV?
Get out of here, creep. Beat it. I want you to make love to me.
I'm Todd.
Terry's brother?
You're so nice. I've never kissed a girl before.
You really ought to try it sometime. I gotta go. Bye. Did you kiss him or what? No way. And he had this really weird look on his face. Oh, how creepy.
You haven't seen my darker side yet, have you?
Turkey. I'm really sorry to disturb you, but Operator, I'm begging you. This is a real emergency. Hello? Is anybody there? Wait there. There's somebody after me and he's chasing me and he's trying to hurt me.
You're gonna hurt my kidneys.
Oh, God.
I'm gonna make everything all right.
Not cranberry sauce.
Louise Glasser, Mark Sofer, Julie Gordon, Marianne Cantor. Special effects by Ed French. Blood Rage.
Todd and Terry are identical twin brothers. One night at a drive-in theater in 1974, a young Terry sees his mother, Maddie, who's played by Louise Lasser, and her date begin kissing inside the car. He is upset that his mother is back at it again, as he quote-unquote says. He wakes his brother and they sneak out of the car. Apparently, triggered by his mother's promiscuity, Terry takes a hatchet and murders a teenager who's having sex with his girlfriend in the back of their car. Then, he frames Todd by spearing blood all over him, giving him the hatchet, and Todd, who's very traumatized from what he's just seen, can't speak or defend himself, and eventually found guilty and committed to an asylum. 10 years later, in 1984, the now adult Terry lives happily with his mother in a sprawling but secluded apartment complex named Shadow Woods. On Thanksgiving Day, Terry's long dormant murderous rage is revived when his mother lets everyone know at the dinner table while they're having Thanksgiving dinner that she's getting engaged to her fiancé Brad, who's played by William Fuller, who owns the complex. Terry also learns that his twin brother Todd, whom he framed for murder a decade earlier, has escaped from his mental hospital and may be heading home. Terry ends up murdering Brad by chopping his right hand off with a machete before splitting his head open. He plans on, again, framing his brother Todd. Terry and Todd are both played by Mark Soper. Dr. Berman, Todd's psychiatrist, and her assistant Jackie arrive at Shadow Woods in search of Todd. They are played by Marianne Cantor and Doug Weiser, respectively. Terry greets Jackie before murdering him with his machete, and soon after cuts Dr. Berman in half with the machete in the woods. He discards his bloody t-shirt and changes into a vest. Then he visits his neighbor, Andrea, played by Lisa Randall, who is babysitting. Andrea attempts to seduce Terry, but he seems uninterested. Then her mother, Julie, and her date, Bill, arrive home from their date, and they are played by Jane Benson and Ed French, respectively. Meanwhile, Terry's friend Karen, who's played by Julie Gordon, bumps into Todd, who's arrived at Shadow Woods, but she believes him to be Terry. When Todd reveals his true identity to her, she flees to tell her friends. She also tells Terry, who immediately disappears into the night in search of his twin brother, while Karen and her friends Greg and Artie go to Andrea's house to party. Greg and Artie are played by Chad Montgomery and James Farrell, respectively. Upon learning that her son Todd has returned to Shadow Woods, Maddie begins to panic and drink heavily. Todd comes across Dr. Berman's body and becomes emotional. He takes Dr. Berman's gun and goes off in search of his mass-murdering twin brother. Back at Andrea's, Bill has been decapitated by Terry, who then stabs Julie to death. Terry spies on Greg and Andrea playing tennis before he murders both of them by the swimming pool. Artie finds the bodies of Greg and Andrea before being held at gunpoint by Todd, who tries to convince him that he's not him, but actually his brother Terry, who is murdering everyone. Todd flees when Terry sees him, leaving Artie with Terry. As Artie and Terry search for Todd, Artie is suddenly stabbed in the neck with a carving fork. Karen soon discovers the truth about Terry and Todd, and Terry chases her around Shadow Woods to kill her. Karen flees to Julie's house and discovers her dead body, and takes the baby with her. After a very drunk Maddie contacts the police, she finds Terry's bloody t-shirt in the garbage bin before making the horrifying discovery of Brad's body with his head split open. At the swimming pool, Terry has found Karen with the baby. Todd arrives and fights his brother inside the pool. As Todd is pulled out of the pool by Karen, Maddie appears and shoots Terry, killing him. She thinks she has killed Todd, not Terry, and upon realizing that she has killed Terry and not Todd, she becomes distraught, while Karen flees with the baby. The film ends as a hysterical Maddie commits suicide by shooting herself in the head while Todd watches. Police sirens are heard in the distance, while Todd's fate is left unknown. Kill Counter. Okay, so now's where we get to the part where we get through all the deaths and killings in the film. And Blood Rage has 11 total deaths in the relatively short runtime, which is all we really ask for in a slasher. So let's take a look at the deaths one by one. We open the film at the drive-in, and the first death comes with a teenager having sex with his girlfriend. He's killed by 7 whacks from a hatchet to the face. From there, we have 8 kills perpetrated by Terry in one night, starting off with his mom's fiancé, Brad. He has his hand cut off and head split open with a machete. Then he kills Jackie by stabbing him through the gut with the machete. After he finds Dr. Berman looking for Todd, he cuts her in half at the waist. We don't get to see the decapitation of Bill. That happens off screen. Greg and Andrea are both slashed and killed with the machete. Artie is stabbed in the neck with a carving fork, and Julie is found stabbed in the chest with the machete. Terry chases Karen all over Shadow Woods, and she has Julie's baby, and they end up in the community pool. Here, he is shot 4 times by his mother, Maddie, in the pool. And Todd goes to comfort his crying mother, and she says that they'll be okay because she stopped Todd. Todd explains that she killed Terry and that he is Todd. Maddie becomes more distressed and shoots herself in the head. And that ends the film. 8 people were killed by Terry in one night. And that's a pretty solid amount for a slasher from the height of like that era when slashers were pretty big. So let's get on to my final thoughts. Blood Rage, also known as Nightmare at Shadowwoods and Slasher, is a low-budget slasher that set itself apart by being set at Thanksgiving without making that like the centerpiece of the film, you know, like Halloween does, or Friday the 13th, or like, I think there's one that's New Year's, one that's April Fool's Day, or even like Black Christmas, you know, like the whole thing revolves around, like the film revolves around the holiday more so, I think, in those other films than this one, because it really kind of like comes in like at a point where at the beginning where it's like, oh, they're having Thanksgiving, and then it doesn't really come up too much. There is another scene where the mom's like eating the leftovers, and then like he says, ooh, that's not cranberry sauce, like over and over. That's like his like catchphrase, I guess. But other than that, really, there really isn't too much like about like Thanksgiving. And it is kind of weird that like, why is the mom having a date on Thanksgiving? I don't know. It's kind of weird. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. There are many like slashers that were pumped out during the 80s, and like most don't stand out in any way. And this film kind of falls into the same cookie cutter template that the others followed. But the idea of the twins, one like that, and like one is evil, is kind of fun. It's kind of like the like Simpsons episode of the Treehouse of Horror. I know that came after, but where like one twin's evil and the other one's not, but they got the wrong one or whatever, and they locked up the wrong twin, and everyone just believes that the psychopath is charming and sexy, is kind of strange. But you know what? A lot of women fell in love with Ted Bundy after they learned about his crimes. So it's not really unheard of, right? Overall, the acting is fine. I think Mark Soper does a pretty okay job playing like the two different characters. He knows how to like portray like the emotions different for each one. Like one doesn't have emotions and is just killing. The other one does. I think what's her name? Louise Lasser. She does a pretty okay job. I mean, she was an actress, I think, before this. She was on Mary Hartman. But everyone else, you can kind of feel like, oh, this is either their first film, their like second film, and probably only film. The directing is fine, I think, for what we get, but the editing is where I have like a little bit of an issue. It's a little jumpy here and there. There are times where it just like kind of cuts to either we don't get to see what they see, we don't see what they're running from. It just altogether cuts to a different scene, like kind of like and not like a nice like smooth like here's the scene, they're sitting on the couch, and cut to like, oh, another angle of the couch, and then like something happens, like the phone rings. It would be like they're on the couch, and all of a sudden they're already on the phone, like the next cut. So, things like that, where like it just kind of jumps here and there, and it's like, okay, I could get behind it if that's what like you were going for in the edit, and if that's kind of like the style you're going for. But because the film doesn't really do that in other places, it feels like, oh, they either forgot to shoot that, and like they just kind of were like, well, people will get it, or they just didn't know what they were doing when they were editing it, and thinking like, well, the audience will get this if we just kind of cut from here to here, we can just kind of cut that out, and it doesn't make sense, but whatever. Other than that, like, it's just like a okay kind of slasher. There's not really a lot of gore, at least in what I saw from it, from the cut I saw. I think I saw the full cut. I'm not sure, but but if that's like off-putting to you, like the one that I saw, would be able to stomach if you're not a big fan of gore. And at the end of it, it's a pretty good slasher. Like for the time when there was this huge craze for horror films of just pumping these like cheap slashers over and over, and you get like so many a year, and like none of them really stand out. I think that having one that's set like during Thanksgiving, and you can kind of boast about that, I think that's kind of good. You can kind of like say like, oh, look at, we have this film that's set during Thanksgiving. Not many are set during Thanksgiving, and I think that's why like some films like the one Thanksgiving that just came out recently kind of works too. Like, you don't get that many films set. Like the big holidays get all these like films. Halloween, I think, would be the number one that gets films centered around it, because it's the spooky time. You can kind of do creative kills because like things are already kind of set up to be like, oh, there's a skeleton right there. Oh no, wait, that's somebody's skeleton. Or like, oh, it's a grave. Oh no, wait, the grave is undug. Oh my God, the people are coming back from the dead. Kind of things. And then Christmas, you can kind of do the same thing, where it's like snow everywhere, and you can see like the red blood on the snow, and like you can use the lights to like wrap around someone's neck and hang them or something. Like be creative with that. But Thanksgiving, I don't think gets enough, especially sitting between these two huge holidays. Doesn't get enough. I think you could do a lot with Thanksgiving too. I mean, there's like Thanksgiving, the one with the turkey, and then there's the Thanksgiving one, and then there's the one that's on Hulu called Pilgrims. I wanted to watch that one, but I haven't. I just didn't get around to watching it. But I heard it's fine. So, like I said, there's not really a lot. This one, I think, is a pretty good one to put on during that time when everyone's just finished eating. They're getting the dessert. You don't really have to pay attention. You can continue like talking and interacting, socializing, and then like I think the ending really makes the movie work really well. This idea of like, oh, they finally got the right killer. They got him, but she thinks she killed the other one, the good twin. And then when she finds out she killed the one that she likes, the bad twin, she kills herself. Like, I feel like that's something that I would do in a film, to give kind of like a twist. But yeah, no, I mean, like, this is, if you have a chance to watch it, like, Arrow released like a newer version on Blu-ray DVD that has 3 different cuts, so you can kind of choose your own adventure about it. Highly recommend watching it. It's sometime. I mean, during Thanksgiving, it's a perfect movie for Thanksgiving. But other than that, it doesn't really stand out too much. Like I said, the acting is and like it's fine. The edit is kind of okay. Editing is kind of here and there. It's jumpy. Overall, it's a solid like thumbs up. Like, it is a good film. I think it feels like you're back in like the 80s going to watch like a slasher film, and this is like the one you watched and you're like, yeah, it wasn't bad, it wasn't great, it was just okay. And I'm fine with that for, when I'm getting stuffed here, sitting and eating the turkey, the stuffings, the cranberry sauce, and mashed potatoes. Then you're going to sit down and watch something to just kind of put on, and you can, talk about whatever you want. But yeah, it's a good film. Not great, not bad. Solid thumbs up. Now let's get into some stuffingly scary stories. Our first story is called The House Was Haunted for a Week. I moved home for a bit after college. My parents went on a trip one week. The first day they are gone, I'm awoken by the noise of someone rumbling around in my parents' bedroom. I assume it's my mom, only to remember they are gone. I go in the bedroom, not a soul there. I go out of town that night and get a panicky call from my sister saying she was in the crawl space and heard someone walking over her and thought there was a burglar. Again, no one there. Finally, I get home, and for 2 nights, I feel someone touching my pillow and sitting on my bed, along with hearing sighs while sleeping. It all culminates with my dad, who is a total skeptic, hearing someone trying the door to the garage and thinking it was one of us kids. Again, he goes to check it out. Nothing there. And as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Nothing further. Yeah, that's kind of spooky. There's been times where because I had to sleep in like our living room when I moved back home, and that was probably like the scariest stretch of like a month or so that I had to be out there. There were times where I heard like it sounded like, because we have dogs, but they sleep in my parents' room. It sounded like there was a dog like chain like moving around. One time I was pushed out of the bed. It was like a mattress on top of a futon, and it would topple over if you sat on the edge, but I was dead center, and if you're dead center, it won't move either way. I was dead center, and it flipped over. So maybe it was me moving, but I didn't move. I was literally I was asleep, dead center, and I got pushed out of the bed. There were times where I felt like someone was walking around the bed, like that you could kind of hear someone talking. It's just a lot of different things here and there, like freaked me out. I had to sleep sometimes I slept with the light on, because it was like that noticeable to where I'd be like, I don't want to wake up and see something standing there. Our next tale is called Solo Apartment. Years ago, I was living in my first solo apartment. No roommate, just me. I was excited for Christmas that year and decorated my apartment really cute. I had a nativity set that my mom had designed and made for me, and I loved it. I set it up on the floor in front of my tree. At the last minute, I was able to fly home for the holiday and spent it with my parents in a different state. A few days after I returned, I had a knock at my front door. I opened it to find a man and his wife, appeared to be in their mid-50s, and they seemed very surprised to see me. They asked if Larry was there. I told them I didn't know anyone named Larry. They insisted he was their son and he lived in this apartment. I assured them that this was my place and no one named Larry lived here. They said that they had spent Christmas Day with Larry in this apartment, then pointed to where my tree had been and asked what I had done with the beautiful custom-made nativity that had been there. They loved it, and Larry told his mother that she could have it. I had several odd things happen in that apartment, but I was young and didn't have good sense, so I didn't move for years. Okay, so now this is someone responding to that story. What are the other odd things? And this is the poster as they continued. I was young and still had a lot of stuffed animals from when I was a kid. I came home from work one evening and they were all lined up in a row under my bedroom window. The covers on my bed were turned down and a clean pair of panties were on my pillow. I did not leave that place that way when I left for work that morning. I had things disappear from there, like a nightshirt I loved, a coffee mug, and a photo of myself and my cousin. A couple of times I looked out the window and saw a guy standing by my car, staring at my window, but it was a different guy each time. Once I heard a noise in the hallway and looked through the peephole in the door. What I saw was an eye staring at me through the peephole. Just weird stuff that none of my neighbors seemed to experience. And this is the same person responding. That sounds like someone was stalking you. And then the poster. It does, and I think what it was. That's what it was. I was dating a cop at the time, and he started leaving his patrol car in the parking lot next to my car, and things calmed down for a while, but didn't stop completely. Now, to me, that is creepy. Super duper creepy. Like, you went out of town and then you get back and then some people come to your door and are like, yeah, no, this is my son's house. And it's like, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, and then they even talk about, like, things that you took down. Like, you took down the decorations, but it's still, like, they know of all the decorations. That's just creepy. The whole situation. And then it's weird that, like, it wasn't just, like, the same guy who was standing by your car. It was different guys. Sounds even weirder to me. Like, maybe it was a few people. Like, the fact that, like, you'd come home and, like, things were missing, things were moving around. Yeah, it does sound like you were being stalked by somebody. Someone was definitely coming into your house when you weren't there and doing things. Our next story is called Barreling Down the Road. I was driving from the local airport, my wife is a pilot, one evening with my future wife. About 9 p.m., the road took us by a pull-off where some county dumpsters were on one side of the road. As we drove by, a blacked-out car that had been parked spun out on the gravel and got right behind me doing the same speed limit. I mean, he was so close in the rear view, I could only see the tint on his windshield, not even his car's hood. It wasn't a police car, it was an early 2000s Chevy. He was following us. I took some random turns using my blinker, thinking at first he was just going the same way as me and wanted me to hurry up on the one-lane road with a double yellow. But after about 3 random turns that kept up in the same area, I realized it wasn't random. I told my wife to hold on to something and aggressively turned down a side road with my blinker indicating another way. Sped 90 down a road with a much lower speed than that. Took a few extra turns and ended up in a parking in an airport parking lot. Turned off my lights and we waited. The same car came barreling down the road. I was just on hauling ass. Watched him go around a bend out of sight, and I took off hauling ass in the opposite direction with my lights off, using the moonlight to see. Once I got close to a main road, I flicked the lights on and drove under the speed limit the rest of the way home. Freaked us both out so much. Almost called the cops and parked at the police station so the cops could pull him over instantly. No idea what they were doing, but they didn't play games with that shit. And that's creepy. Just imagine, like you're down some random side road somewhere and then like someone just is keeping up with you behind you, like no lights on or like just like blacked out, and then maybe the lights also are cutting into your line of view so you can't really see much. You can only see their like windshield that's blacked out. And yeah, it's just like they're keeping up with you. That's creepy. Like they definitely were trying to do something to you, probably hoping you take them to like your house or something and then do something there, or maybe like you turn off somewhere to be like, hey, what are you doing or something, then do something to you. They definitely wanted to do something bad to you. I'm just glad that they were able to get out of that situation. It's terrifying. Our next story is called My Mom's Doppelganger. Not home alone, but upstairs alone. I saw a doppelganger of my mom a few years back, and I think she heard mine. I was sitting in my bed, and I looked up when I heard her coming up the stairs. She walked by my door, looking straight at me with no expression, and walked into her room and closed the door. I'd say hi as she walked by, but figured whatever. She didn't hear me, or maybe she was getting something from her room. Then about 5 seconds later, she yells up the stairs from downstairs and says, "Did you call me?" And I'm not ashamed to say I freaked the fuck out. She came upstairs, looked down the hall, and said, "Did you close my door?" I didn't, and neither did she. She never closed that door because one of our cats primarily lived in her bedroom, and so she always kept the door open so the cat could come and go as she pleased. It wasn't just closed as if the wind had shut it and was fully closed and the windows were shut. Ma said she had clearly heard me yell, "Hey Mom, come here," from upstairs. I had done no such thing. I'm never entirely sure what I believe and what I don't, but I was totally sober, not tired, and it wasn't even some movement under the corner of my eye thing. Yeah, that sounds pretty creepy. That there's like just some like doppelganger going around of your mom in your house, looking at you when your mom's in the house downstairs. That's even creepier. Just so weird. And now, our final story for the evening. Rental house on campus. The first house I moved into out of high school was going into college was a very old, very small house in a town that dated back to the Civil War. I lived there with 3 other guys since rents were high, but we made it work. The house was built on a hill and had a small driveway in front of it, with a U-shaped driveway in back. It had a full basement and was owned by someone with multiple rental properties in the area. They told us we had full access to the upstairs, but that they used the downstairs for storage and to never go down there because it was full of their stuff. We never questioned it because the rent for this particular location of our area was low. We were still technically on campus, but our house was surrounded by other college students, so we could have parties whenever we wanted to. Everything was great until we started having unwanted visitors. At first, things were pretty easy to ignore or completely write off. A roommate home by themselves would walk into a room and the lights would be on when they were home alone and hadn't flipped any switches. Someone else would hear a faucet turn on and off in a room with no one in it. We tried to do what research we could at the time and found that the water pressure can cause faucets to do some crazy things on their own, and that power surges can do similar things with flickering lights. Unfortunately, things kept getting stranger. At one point, one roommate, who was home alone, got out of the shower, looked into the mirror to start shaving, and noticed that someone else stepped out of the shower behind him and left the room. He searched the house, but couldn't find anyone else home at the time. Later on, a different roommate had several items go missing out of his room, including his keys and a pocket knife. He later found them in our microwave. Again, no one else was home at the time. Me, personally, I got home on a day when nobody else was at the house for the next couple of hours between classes. There was a folding chair on the front porch next to the door, and I had an armload of books. I set the books down in the chair, unlocked and pushed open the front door, turned and picked up my books, and when I went to walk into the house, the door slammed in my face. I thought the wind had caused the door to shut and went to open it, but discovered that the door had locked itself again, both handle and deadbolt. Last of all, 3 of us were sitting together on a couch watching TV when we heard a loud, heavy thud, as though something had been dragged off a bed in a back room. All 3 of us later confirmed that we could distinctly hear both footsteps walking through the house, as well as the sound of something heavy being dragged behind. Last of all, the back door opened and slammed shut, even though we were all in the living room and there was supposed to be no one else in the house. A week later, we started to smell gas in the house. We called the authorities in the middle of the night and they searched the house with us waiting on the front lawn. Finally, they told us that they couldn't find a gas leak and asked us to open the basement. We had never been in there at our landowner's request, but since the fire department was asking, we opened the garage door. Right in front of us was a Honda Shadow motorcycle with a large pool of gasoline underneath it, where the gas tank had apparently leaked underneath it and the rest of the house. The firefighters saw this and decided to leave. While we were left to look around the rest of the basement, most of what we found was shelves and shelves of canned vegetables. But in the very middle of the floor, under everyone's bedrooms, was a mortuary table and a second device. I'm still not sure what the second device was. It was cylindrical with small viewport in the front door. It seemed to have some places on the back for hoses or pipes to connect to it, although nothing was attached when we found it. It It was about the right size for a couple of 2 liters of soda to fit inside. Soon after, we found out that our landowner worked night shifts at a local hospital. Whatever it might have been, we decided that enough was enough, and we all decided to move out as soon as our leases were up. I was the last one there. I promise that the last 7 days I spent there alone are the longest days I've spent anywhere since. I'm a self-described cynic who doesn't believe in the supernatural, but I can admit when I have absolutely no explanation for a set of events. I'm sure some Reddit scientists will be able to explain everything that happened to me now that many years have passed, but I don't need their explanations anymore. I just accept that being in an old house alone is not a good idea, and do my best to try and avoid them altogether. And that's scary as hell. Even if you were to try and find reasons behind like the water pressure thing, or maybe a power surge here and there, but then maybe it was someone the landlord coming in at night, moving around and stuff. But then how do you explain the guy getting out of the shower, seeing someone else get out of the shower, walk behind him, and then there's no one else in the house? How do you explain when they heard the sound of a body being dragged, or something large being dragged, and then the back door opening and shut when they're there? They're in the living room and they didn't see anything. It just, to me, this just sounds so scary, especially because it's it's a house that dates back to the Civil War. Maybe it has a little bit of a history of something else behind it, right? Who knows? But yeah, this just sounds so scary. As soon as I read this, I was like, yes, I gotta read this for the podcast because this is so scary. This is a good one. This is a good story. And what do you think? Do you think it was maybe just something that we can't explain? What do you think happened here? You think it might have been something a little bit more than that, something more strange? Who knows? Did you get stuff this year? Was dessert delicious? Were family members arguing over something dumb? Well, hopefully this was able to settle you all for the holiday. Thank you all for listening, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe to get every new episode downloaded. Do you have any strange, mysterious, or unexplained stories? Are they fact? Did you craft a story yourself? If you'd like to read your stories, you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We love to read them on the podcast. We also like to post those stories on our socials on Instagram, Threads, or TikTok at Horrorbox Podcast, where we also have updates and news. One last thing, if you like the podcast and would like to support the podcast, buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It would really help out. Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.